Hello, sweet friends. Welcome back to the podcast. Before I jump in, I want to just request if you all can help me out. I would love for you all to leave a rating and a review of the podcast. It really helps others find us. So if you are enjoying what you are listening to here, please, please, please pause quickly, rate the podcast, and leave a review. It would be really helpful, and I'd really appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, done with that part of the podcast episode. Let's jump in. I want to talk about today what gets in the way of us choosing happiness. And, the inspiration behind this was one of my clients who just brilliant, brilliant, brilliant human being who has essentially ticked off every box, every career box they have. They've ticked everything off, even in their family. They have a marriage. They're married to somebody that really supports them and loves them. They have a beautiful home. They have children that are healthy. And still, there's something that was blocking her from choosing happiness. And I just thought that was so fascinating. And also, I know that it's not unique because it was also my story. For so long, I struggled to, I want to say allow myself to feel happy, but I don't think that's it. I just think I was blocked from being able to fully experience happiness. I was really blocked. I think I was afraid. So we're going to dive in today and we are going to talk about why that is. And we're going to go pretty deep. Okay. We're going to unpack why happiness can actually feel really uncomfortable, even unsafe for some people, or maybe even just wrong, especially if you are a high achiever, if you are high functioning, if you are a first generation professional, if you come from immigrants, if you are a cycle breaker, maybe you're someone that came from a lot of poverty and now you've broken that cycle, and anyone else who has been taught that the only way to be successful is to sacrifice. All right, so let's jump in. So let's talk about why this topic matters, why it matters for everybody, even for you. So, why is it that we should care about happiness? And I think, now more than ever, this concept has become something that is just more widely accepted. That yes, we should really care about being happy, that we should focus on happiness, that happiness matters more for many people than so many other metrics. And one of the hats that I wear, one of my jobs is I do wellness and resilience for a large national physician organization. And when I think about that work and why I do it, in my mind, it's because I want them to feel fulfillment. I want them to feel fulfilled and happy at the end of the day. That's what I want. And there's been a ton of research to back up why it's important to feel happy. One study that was published in 2005 reports that when you are feeling happier, when you are feeling more fulfilled, you are more productive, you are more creative, you are more successful. But I'm going to put all of that aside. So, yes, all of that is true, but I don't want you all to choose happiness just because you want to be more productive or more creative. No, I want you to choose happiness just to choose happiness. I want you to choose happiness because you're worth it, because it matters, and because I have come to understand that as a woman, as a daughter of immigrant, as a person of color, as someone that was raised with a lot of poverty, I have come to understand that choosing happiness is actually an act of reclamation. It's a revolutionary act of reclamation. It's not easy. And when we do it, it's incredibly powerful. And it shows all of the generations coming after us that it's possible for them too, that they can choose happiness too. Plus, happiness itself is information. When we are feeling joy, when we are feeling happy, it's kind of a signal. It tells us when we're in alignment. It shows us, oh, our nervous system is regulated. This feels good. It tells us when we are living our own truth, not the blueprint that somebody else has handed us, not what somebody else told us we need to be doing. So then the question is, since happiness matters so much, why is it that so many of us avoid it? Okay, so let's talk about why we avoid it. Now, before I go any further, I want to be real about something. This conversation right now feels incredibly privileged. Being here saying choose happiness feels incredibly privileged, and I just want to say that because some people have much more space to choose happiness than others. If you are not afraid that you're going to get, we're living at a time right now. I don't know when you're listening to this podcast episode, but if you are listening to it sometime around the summer of 2025, what's happening with immigration and ICE, especially in immigrant communities, is terrifying. And you don't have the luxury to choose happiness if that's you. And that is very real. That is very real. So I just want to name, if you don't have a steady paycheck, if your work is inflexible, you don't have flexibility, if you if you were not given a ton of money, if you were not given a ton of wealth, it makes it harder to choose happiness. Or if you don't have a career path that is, now like something that you've chosen out of passion or love, instead your career path is tied to your survival, it's a little harder to choose happiness. So I just want to name that. And I also know that, my audience, the people that listen to this podcast are professionals, many first gen, many third gen, professionals listening to this podcast that have the privilege, that have the luxury to now choose happiness. And even though I know all of you listening likely do have the luxury to now choose happiness, even for you, it's incredibly hard to do that. It's incredibly difficult to access. That's why I want to have this conversation, because yes, listen, I was not given a lot of privilege when I came into this earth. I was given the privilege of, I have a neurotypical brain. I had two parents and they loved me. I was given that privilege, and I have all of my faculties. I have two arms and 2 feet, and I have a ton of privilege I was given. But I also come from an immigrant family that didn't have a lot growing up. We experienced poverty growing up. I had a single mom most of the time. I had a lot of childhood trauma. Nobody gave me a huge paycheck or generational wealth, none of that. And here I am today. So here I am today. I've chose a career that I loved, that I felt a calling towards, and now I'm at a place where I have the opportunity to choose joy, which I know many of you do too. Okay, I know that felt a little redundant, but I just think it's important to name that, yes, I get it. It's a privilege to have this conversation, and we are so blessed. We're so blessed. I feel so grateful that I have the privilege now to choose joy, to reclaim joy. That's why this is so important, especially, again, if we come from families, from communities, from lineages, if our ancestors weren't given this choice, if our ancestors were not given this choice, I kind of feel like it's my responsibility to feel joy in the deepest, deepest way. They say in our mystical world, my mystical training, and in a lot of my ancestral training, that when we heal something for ourselves, we are not just healing it for ourselves. So when I reclaim joy, I'm not just reclaiming joy for me, I am reclaiming joy for all of the generations behind me that could not do it for themselves. Because our healing affects 7 generations behind and 7 generations in the future. When we heal this wound of, gosh, why can't I be happy, or why can't I choose joy? It's a reclamation that doesn't just support you, it supports ancestors before you and generations after you. It's incredibly powerful. And by the way, joy doesn't mean quit your job, go move to Bali. Not at all. Joy is simple. It could be as simple as saying no when you want to say no without feeling afraid. Oof, without feeling afraid that someone's going to get mad at you if you say no. You just don't want to do it. Can you just say no, thank you? Joy can be letting yourself rest. Just sit and rest without feeling guilty, letting yourself read a book without having your nervous system go bananas, or laughing with your kids, like sitting with your kids and just laughing out loud with your kids instead of being on your phone, or instead of thinking, oh, I can't laugh. That's too silly. That's kiddish. That's childlike. I can't play with my kids. Or it could just be honoring your body when your body wants to slow down. All of these are small, radical acts of joy, and they're all acts of reclamation. Okay, so why is it that we avoid what makes us happy? I'm going to go deep here. Let's get into the real reasons. Number one, I think that the number one reason, or at least I've seen often with all of my clients, is that they haven't defined what joy is for them. They have not defined. So for you, it might be the same thing. Maybe you haven't defined yet what happiness is for you, what joy is for you. Because you all know that we inherit ideas. We inherit ideas of what success is, of what joy is supposed to be, happiness from adult figures in our life, our parents, our mentors, society. Get the degree, get the job, get the house, all of these things, climb up the corporate ladder, then you will finally be happy. Build the 7-figure business, have the calendar full of clients, go on these fancy retreats, then you will be happy. But we don't really ever pause to say, hold on a second. What is it that actually makes me feel alive? What actually do I enjoy? What actually makes me feel like joyful, peaceful? What is that for me? And I will tell you, man, in my journey, once I started doing this, gosh, I had to do so much healing work before I actually got to the point of choosing happiness and joy. And once I got to choosing happiness and joy, I was lost. I was like, oh, maybe happiness is just sitting down and resting, or maybe happiness is just like being super zen and, non-striving and all of these tenets of Buddhism that I'm not Buddhist, but I practice a lot of those tenets of Buddhism because I see them as universal truths. And what I've realized is that no, maybe that is joy for other people, but that is not what it is for me. For me, what makes me feel alive, what makes me feel happy and joyful is being in service, challenging myself, doing like creating. Creating brings me so much joy. I love it. I love helping people. I love watching them, grow and mature. And I love empowering other people. That brings me joy. It also brings me joy to dance. I love dancing. I love dancing with my friends. I love dancing with my kids. I love dancing. So there are so many things that can bring us joy. Even just playing charades with my kids or playing charades with my friends, I love that. I laugh so hard. It brings me so much joy. So, what is it for you that brings you joy? What is your definition of happiness? And really stop and ask yourself, like, well, what is it for me? Like, what is happiness for me? And be okay that it might not be the same thing that it was for the people that raised you. The other thing that I see here often is, again, we think that, oh, gosh, we think that we are dishonoring the people that came before us if we are not living the life that they lived, or if we're not living what they told us to live, if we're not living the life that was supposed to make us happy, or if we can rest, and our ancestors could not. Holy smokes, the level of guilt that we can feel. It causes us again to live someone else's dream, but it also creates this mindset error. I'm going to talk about the mindset error in a second, but before, thinking about living somebody else's version, that's kind of tied to that first one. You haven't defined happiness for yourself. But this is especially true for those of you that are carrying someone else's dream. Maybe it was your mom's dream to become a doctor, and so you became a doctor, or your grandfather's dream to have, this big corporation and financial stability, and so you did it. Or it's the dream of your culture. Maybe you come from a culture where prestige really matters. And so they push that on you. You have to have the biggest degree or the biggest name or the biggest house because that's how you measure prestige. But that's not something that you actually care about. In fact, that is causing you so much stress and dread because you're having to work so hard to do that and you don't even want it. And here's the thing, all of those dreams, they're awesome and they're valid and they're beautiful. But if they are not yours, if they're not your dream, they will never make you feel truly fulfilled. They will never bring you joy and happiness if they are not yours. They will bring you stress. You will feel like you're living somebody else's dream. And I just want to pause here and say, I want you to imagine yourself at the end of your life, being 90 years old, looking back on your life. Whose version of happiness do you want to be living? Do you want to look back and say, wow, I'm so grateful I lived X's version of happiness, or I'm so grateful I chose me and my version of happiness? Okay, so I talked a little bit about us feeling like we are dishonoring the people that came before us. This one was huge for me. Oh my goodness. So I had a thought and a feeling and a deep held belief that if I was not suffering, I was not succeeding. And that if I was not suffering, then, that's not fair. There's so many people that suffer. Look at all these people that are suffering in the world. I should be suffering too. Why? I'm not different than anybody else. I should be suffering. And I know like my family, my ancestors, holy smokes, they struggled, they were immigrants. Again, I'm first gen and they farm workers, they were day laborers. They worked really hard. They worked so hard. And in my mind, I thought me working hard was honoring also their hard work, that I was honoring their hard work, and that me suffering was also honoring their work. And then I paused and I was like, okay, let me just pause for a second. When I think back, if, my mom passed away a year ago, but if I was going to ask my mom, hey, mom, do you want me to suffer every day because then I'll be honoring you? Like, absolutely not. She would not want me to suffer. My mom only wanted me to like be happy and have a great life and be, like all of those things my mom wanted for me. She didn't want me to suffer. So when you think about that, if that's resonating with you, just be with that and really be honest with yourself. Is that really true? Or is that just something you're holding on to? Because truthfully, it's so interesting because it almost feels like there's some merit to it because you feel like you're a good person. You feel like you're a good person if you suffer because, oh, the world has so much bad. I need to work really hard or I need to continue to suffer. So if you are that person that feels like, okay, if I'm not suffering, I'm going to feel guilty. But if you that's one way to think about it. But the other way, which I found so fascinating, is if I am not suffering, then I am not succeeding because the only way to succeed is to work really hard, and working hard stinks. It's suffering. So I see my clients who have this thought error, which if I'm not suffering, I'm not succeeding. And if I'm not succeeding, then what the heck? What's the point of my life? Why? Because they have tied their own self-worth to success, which means that their self-worth is tied to suffering. So if they are not suffering, then they are unworthy. Holy smokes. That's like at a different level than I also felt some of that, by the way, but that was at a different level than if I am not suffering, then I am a bad person because there's so much suffering in the world. So, two different thoughts there to be with. And a few other thought errors that I've seen is if I can either have an impact in the world or I can be happy, but I cannot have both. I took care of a client, or I had a client, took care of a client. I say take care of patients, but I had a client who really had this big dream and wanted to make a big impact in the world. And she knew that it was going to cause she was going to need to invest in it, financially invest in it. And she was so afraid. She was like, okay, well, whatever. We'll live in squalor for a little bit while I invest in this thing. And I'm like, oh, hold on a second. You don't have to do that. You can probably have both. Let's just pause and think about it. But in her mind, she either was making an impact or she was really happy or joyful, but she couldn't have both. And then one last thought that I think really gets in the way of happiness for a lot of people is if I choose happiness or if I choose joy, I am being irresponsible. I am being irresponsible. So I want you all just to see what comes up for you when you hear me mention those thought errors or those limiting beliefs. Thought errors are things that we think that are not giving us the results that we want. So if you have any of those, just really be with those. Those are things that really need to get unpacked. And by the way, this is what I do with my clients. So I'd be happy to unpack this with you. If this is something you want to do, you can reach out to me. So underneath a lot of these thoughts, by the way, are fears. Fears like, what if I fail? What if I lose the approval of my family or my community? That's a big one I hear a lot. Or what if what if I waste the sacrifices that my family made or I don't honor their sacrifices? So, just a few more core beliefs or core fears that might be underneath some of those mindsets. So, we're talking right now about why we avoid what makes us happy. We talked about, us not defining happiness yet for ourselves, living somebody else's version of happiness, and then a bunch of limiting beliefs and thought errors that might get in the way, which leads me to your nervous system. So, the last reason why we don't choose happiness is because, and this one can be really like, oof, for a lot of people, is that joy or happiness does not feel safe to our body. It causes our nervous system to dysregulate. This is bananas. And it is so, 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 so true. If you were raised in an environment where baseline was anxiety, baseline was chaos, or baseline was work your butt off, be productive all of the time, you always have to be working, then rest or happiness or joy, even just like letting things be easy, that all might feel very foreign to you. Or worse, it feels dangerous. It can feel dangerous to you. You might have been raised in a way where your body may literally not trust joy, not trust happiness. And this can happen if you were raised like that, or if you are descended from somebody that was raised like that, because that's how epigenetics works. So the way our epigenetics are the way our genes are expressed. So we inherit our epigenetics from people around us. And we can actually influence our epigenetics by the life that we live, which means we can then influence our epigenetics. We can shift them, change them to lead towards more intentional results in our lives so that our children don't have to experience the same thing we experience. This is why doing this work matters so much and is so important, because you're not just doing it for yourself, you are doing it for generations that come after you over and over again. So if your nervous system does not trust joy, does not trust happiness, it's really important to know that, because this is where the sense of unprocessed guilt, unprocessed fear, this sense of unworthiness, all of these things are leading you unconsciously to resist what brings you joy, what brings you inner peace, or what brings you happiness. Ah, man, your nervous system doesn't know how to hold joy yet. This was so interesting. I had a client once who she was an entrepreneur, and she had this big financial goal. And as she was getting closer and closer to the goal, she kept hitting this wall. She kept hitting this wall. And just to make the numbers easy, I'll make up some numbers here. These are not her numbers, but just to make up the numbers. Let's say she wanted to get to 500,000. And she had created 100,000 before, she'd created 250 before, she'd created 300 before, and now she was at 450, about to get to 500. And she was like, I don't know why. I just can't get I can't move past this last little bit. I can't move past it. She kept feeling stuck no matter what she did. Whatever program she launched, anything she would do, she couldn't get herself to that 500. And what we realized for her is that she did not feel safe at that number, that $500,000. She didn't feel safe there. Her body felt so unregulated. She didn't feel like she deserved it yet, because that is the goal she'd been working towards forever. It would have meant happiness for her. And she didn't think like she had suffered enough or worked hard. Well, she didn't say suffered enough. She said, I have not worked hard enough yet for it. And so I was like, oh, that's interesting. And so in her mind, she hadn't suffered enough to get to receive that gift. And she was so close. And once we were able to see that and heal that for her, all of a sudden it was like a waterfall. She got to that goal. She was able to surpass it and get to the next goal. That is super powerful stuff. You block yourself from receiving what it is you want when you don't feel safe to receive it yet. I am rereading The Alchemist right now. If you have not read The Alchemist, read The Alchemist. Do yourself a favor. It's one of my all-time favorite books. I've read it like 13, 14 times. I'm rereading it again. I reread it when I feel just like, I need to hear Paulo Coelho's words again. And it's a great book. And in the beginning, one of the things I don't think I'd ever read, or maybe I'd read before, but it didn't land the way it landed this time. I'm looking for my book right now, but I think it's up by my bed because I'm reading it. So I was going to flip to that page and read it to you, but I'll paraphrase. So one of the things he says is in the very beginning of the book, in the epilogue, he's just talking about how he published the book. And he talks about 4 things that get in the way of you achieving your personal legend. Personal legend is what he calls like your purpose on earth. And he said the last one is you don't feel like you deserve it. And when you don't feel like you deserve to live your purpose or achieve your purpose, you will start doing all of these things to sabotage yourselves. And self-sabotage is fascinating because we don't actually want to sabotage ourselves. What we are trying to do when we sabotage is we are trying to keep us away from what doesn't feel safe. It doesn't feel safe yet for me to achieve that, for me to receive that, for me to have that. That doesn't feel safe. And so I quote unquote sabotage to keep myself keep myself living the life that I've been living because this feels safe to my nervous system. So I'm just naming that for you. If that resonates with you, I have a whole episode number 11, about regulating your nervous system. So be with that. That is something that's really important. Okay, so let's go on here. We talked about why it's important, what gets in the way, and now I want to spend the rest of the episode talking about how to do it. How can we start reclaiming happiness? Okay, so what is it that you can do? And I want to just name that this is something I want to invite all of you to start this process, but to be slow with yourself, be gentle with yourself. This isn't something that like old version of Vanessa would have created like a 30-day plan and exactly what I'm going to do every day, step by step. This is what I'm going to do to be happy. That energy is likely not going to help you create the happiness you want to create. So I'll give you a few things that I think might be helpful. Number one, start by defining what it means for you. Really sit and ask yourself, what does happiness mean for me? What is joy? And for me, the word joy felt really intangible to me because I think I had made it mean all of these banana things. Like I had put this joy on this pedestal because I felt like I could never achieve it. I'm never going to be happy. I'm never going to feel joy. So use whatever word resonates with you. Maybe it's happiness, maybe it's joy. And start by asking yourself, what does a happy day look like for me? What does it look like when I'm happy? And whatever comes up, let it come up. Don't judge it because it's okay for your happiness to be different than what you thought it was supposed to be, or what somebody told you it was supposed to be. So what does a happy day look like for me? So that's the first question. And another question you can ask yourself is, if I just wanted to do what my body felt like doing without feeling guilty, what would that be? What would I be doing? Because your body always knows the answer. Your body always knows. Your body is an incredible instrument. It's very brilliant. It's innately intelligent. So if you let your body do what it wanted it to do, what would that be? So, and then what's really important is when you're journaling this, you can ask yourself, is this really mine? Or is this somebody else's thoughts? Was this handed down to me? And it's okay. I want you to be okay. Whatever comes up, let it come up. And I don't want you to feel like you're betraying anybody. You're not dishonoring or betraying your family, your culture, your parents, none of that. You are just evolving. It's all about evolving. It's all about you. We rise on the shoulders of the people that came before us. When I think about it that way, I think about, yes, of course, especially my grandmothers. Oh, my grandmothers were the bomb. They worked so hard to give my parents the life that they have. I'm not going to dishonor their work. In fact, I want to rise above. My grandmothers loved me so much. I want to stand on the shoulders of my grandmother and continue to evolve. And if my evolution means like, whoa, I can finally now experience happiness and joy, like, God, what a blessing. That feels subversive almost. What a blessing that is. That's what's available to you and what can be available for the people after you. That's why it's so important to feel this. So, one, define what happiness is for you. If you need some journal prompts, use those journal prompts I just gave earlier. And it might be helpful to really think about what's getting in the way. For example, who do I fear might disappoint if I choose happiness? What am I afraid might happen if I let myself be happy? Or what guilt is showing up? Or am I afraid to fail if I feel happy? Or am I carrying guilt about choosing joy, especially if other people didn't have that choice? So just be with that. Name what's coming up for you. And this is kind of a silly question, but I'm going to just pose it here because I want to invite all of you to think about, do you actually want to choose happiness? Is that actually something you want? I know it sounds like a silly fundament or like a trick question, but honestly, it's not. Ask yourself and be okay with whatever comes up. Maybe the answer is yes, but if it's not, that's okay. If the answer is no, or not yet, or I'm not sure, just be with whatever comes up. So it doesn't matter what the answer is. What matters is how that answer makes you feel. If what comes up for you is like, I don't know yet, and maybe what you're feeling is like sadness that you're not even sure, or grief that you're not even sure, that's okay. because that right there is the messenger. That grief is the messenger. Grief is never a problem. Grief is the messenger. Those emotions are messengers for you. So be with what comes up. And then lastly, depending on what comes up for you, depending on your answers, if you are ready to take even a tiny little step towards joy or happiness, then ask yourself, what's one small thing, just one tiny little thing I can do this week to move towards happiness? Maybe it's just saying no to a meeting that drains you. Maybe it's taking a walk without your phone for 15 minutes. Maybe it's letting yourself hear your favorite music on your drive home from work instead of that podcast or some audiobook that's teaching you something. Maybe it's just letting yourself sing along to something that's silly. Maybe it's choosing to sleep in or take a bath in the morning instead of, first thing in the morning, I'm going to go do this. Whatever it is that you need to do, what's one small thing that you can do? It doesn't have to be gigantic. It's just one tiny little step, because tiny little steps is actually how we help our nervous system start to recalibrate towards like, oh, this may not feel safe, but this tiny little thing feels okay. This tiny little thing feels safe. So little by little is how we recalibrate the nervous system. All right, sweet friends, let's wrap up. And I'm going to wrap up by just reminding you this. Again, I said this in the beginning, I'll say it again. Choosing happiness, choosing joy, especially if you come from a lineage of people that didn't have that privilege, they didn't have that ability, they didn't have that privilege, it's actually a reclamation. I really think about it as a revolutionary act. It feels subversive. I was not joking, but I was talking to my husband. We went to our Harvard graduation a couple months ago, or not our graduation, our reunion. And we met there, he and I met there, and we were walking from our hotel to the campus, and we were holding hands. And I was thinking to myself, holy cow, this is wild. Here I am, like at my reunion, felt so subversive. We had gotten up in the morning, we'd gone to the gym. We were lucky to have our kids being taken care of by our grandparents, so they weren't there. And we were walking to campus and we're holding hands. And I'm like, wow, how wild is this? Like, this is a wild revolutionary act that we are here, that we took this opportunity and that we went all the way with it. And look at what we're doing with our lives now, like giving back and being in service. That felt subversive. And so does joy to me. Feeling joy, allowing myself to say, holy smokes, like, I am so grateful that I get to be happy. I am so grateful that I get to choose joy. I am so grateful. Even thinking about that right now brings emotion to me, because wow, what a privilege. And it is something that when you don't choose it, you are actually dishonoring the people that came before you that worked so hard. When you choose to suffer, you are saying, I'm sorry, your suffering wasn't enough. I got to suffer more. Absolutely not. We get to choose joy. We get to choose happiness. And when we choose it, when women choose it, when people of color choose it, when people who come from backgrounds where they really struggled, when they choose joy, that's powerful, because I know for a fact that it was so much harder for you to do that than it was for anybody else. And that is a revolutionary act. It's an act of reclamation. It's not indulgent. It is just part of who you are. It's sacred. And when leaders choose joy, when entrepreneurs choose joy, you lead differently. You show up differently. You show up with more presence, with more power, with this aligned like sense of purpose. So this week, sweet friends, I want you to just be with us today. And if you are ready to choose even just a tiny little drop of joy, do one small thing for you today. Do one small thing that brings you that happiness. And I would love to know what it is that you're doing or how this episode landed with you. So there's a few ways for you to let me know. Number one, you can tag me on Instagram. I'm at Vanessa Calderon MD. So feel free to DM me or tag me on Instagram. You can also reply directly to me in this episode. So in the show notes, there's a link that says text me. So you can text me directly from that link and I'll respond to you. And you can, of course, reach out to me if you want support, if you want help doing this work. You can find me at vanessacalderonmd.com. Lastly, of course, if you enjoyed this episode, leave us a review on the podcast. It helps other people find the episode. So rate the episode and leave us a review. All right, sweet friends, I'm sending you so much love and just I'm here cheering for you as you choose joy over and over and over again. Adios.